Despite finishing 2023 second in the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes are viewing their season as a failure. In reality, they've been the only consistently performing team behind Red Bull, and while they haven't ever been spectacular, Singapore aside, they have been scoring decent points for the whole season, something Aston Martin, McLaren, and Ferrari can't claim to have done. But for a team that has had as much success as Mercedes have in recent years, anything but winning is a failure in their eyes. In today's video, I'll talk about what went wrong for Merc this season and how they're changing everything for next year to get back to winning ways. Mercedes' public-facing figures, meaning drivers George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, as well as team principal Toto Wolff, have been incredibly negative about their season. They have made progress though. In 2022, they finished third in the Constructors. This year, they finished second. Hamilton was sixth in last year's drivers' standings. This year, he's third. While they have definitely improved compared to those around them, the points they've earned are far less impressive. This season in the Constructors' Championship, they finished with 409 points, a 106-point drop from 2022's 515. Lewis may have finished 3 places higher in the drivers' standings, but he finished with 6 less points. George Russell dropped 100 points from 2022 to 2023. So while their finishing positions may look better, it isn't necessarily due to their own brilliance. It's more down to the fluctuating form of those around them, and the increased competition from McLaren and Aston Martin helping take points off Ferrari. Mercedes' season hasn't been without progress though, at least cosmetically. They ditched the zero-pod W14 at the Monaco Grand Prix, instead adopting a Red Bull-style downwashing side pod. After the 5 races that preceded Monaco, Mercedes had averaged 19.2 points a race. After the zero pods were dropped, they averaged 18.4 points per race. So if anything, ditching the zero pods cost them 0.8 points per race. While that isn't that big a change, it's definitely not an improvement by any metric. Part of the reason why the team didn't see a big uptick in form with the new side pods was that they ended up with a Frankenstein car. They had a chassis that was designed to hold an aero structure with freakishly slim side pods. The impact structure stuck out in places. The suspension setup, which has a huge effect on the overall aero profile, was all wrong as well. The lack of improvement by Mercedes after the zero-pod design was ditched is the perfect proof that Formula 1 is not as simple as just copying your opposition. In a recent interview, Hamilton spoke about how he felt heading into the first test of the 2023 season, after discovering the team was sticking with the zero-pod design. In February, we do a download of where the car is going. I was a little more apprehensive because the previous year it was like, the car is amazing, it's unique, no one's going to have anything like it. And then we get to the first test. So I was a little bit more cautious when I was listening, and I was like, we'll see. And then the car had all these problems. I just knew it was going to be a long year. I'm sure there were frustrations because I'd asked for certain changes and they weren't done. No one knew exactly what the problem was. No one knew how to fix it. That last statement pretty much sums up Mercedes' entire year. They knew the car was bad, so they changed the side pods, but after doing so, they had no idea what to do next. They've brought countless upgrades to the W14, but despite the best intentions in the world, they don't know what the problems are they're trying to fix. Before the ground effect flaws were introduced in 2022, Mercedes relied on their engine power to dominate the sport. While the rest of the grid innovated with a much higher rake car, meaning they lifted the rear of the car higher than the front, Mercedes kept a very low rake. The lack of innovation in the regulations at the time was the key factor to those behind them catching up to them, eventually leading to the 2021 title fight, and Lewis missing out on his record-breaking 8th Drivers' Championship. That lack of innovation in the previous regulations should have been a warning sign for the new regulations, but it was missed. The Mercedes technical team just doesn't seem to have the same brain power as those they're competing with at the front of the grid, and the lack of improvement in the 2 years of the ground effect regulations proves that. Yes, they have developed, but they've not improved. Before Mercedes can do anything to the car for 2024, they must first work out what is wrong with this year's car. The problem is, the fans have very high expectations for next season already. The team has the biggest fan base in the sport, and Hamilton's following is comparable to any superstar in any other sport. It's multiple times larger than any other F1 driver. Both Hamilton and Wolff like to see themselves as the fan favourites of the sport, and that is with reason. After winning almost everything for 8 years, they've received more praise than is good for anyone. Their huge fan base and promises of being competitive has only piled on the pressure to win in 2024. A huge amount of pressure for sure, Hamilton told BBC Sport. Not just Toto, but globally for all of us. Everyone back at the factory, a huge amount of pressure on everyone. For a team that prides itself on its no-blame culture, Wolff and Hamilton have both called out the factory team for underperforming plenty of times this season. Hamilton, though, has now taken it further, saying the time has come for the boss to start leaning on his people more. But he concedes that it's not easy to do while still maintaining a constructive approach. Ultimately, as a boss like Toto, you have to start leaning on people more, rather than backing off on them. And how you do that is not easy, because people break at certain points, he added. So, how do you do it in a constructive way that's encouraging them and inspiring them to continue? For me, hopefully, some of the race results and drives that I've been able to put in, I like to think that sparks inspiration for the guys. Like, oh, we're almost there. As hard as Wolff and Hamilton want to be on their staff, there's only so much the team can do if they can't find the solution to the current technical regulations. Blindly upgrading the car for the sake of perceived progress will result in no progress at all. So how are the team going to turn things around for 2024? Well, with a completely new car from the chassis up. With the zero pods gone, Mercedes are now free to build their 2024 car brand new with a completely new concept. Whether this is a good thing or not, though, entirely depends on how much the team have actually learned over the past 2 years. "We are changing the concept," said Wolff. "We are completely moving away from how we laid out the chassis, the weight distribution, the airflow. I mean, literally, there's almost every component that's being changed because only by doing that, I think we have a chance." Toto is probably right. The team's only chance of reeling in Red Bull is by completely changing the car. But that does come with risks, which Wolff is very aware of. We could get it wrong also. So between not gaining what we expect, catching up, and making a big step and competing in the front, everything is possible. With a complete overhaul, Mercedes do have the option to properly copy Red Bull for 2024 instead of just strapping their side pods on. A couple of aspects of the RB19 in particular will be of interest to the Brackley-based squad. Early in 2023, Red Bull's double or even triple diffuser, depending on who you asked, was seen as the key to their incredible performance. It was credited with giving them that unbelievable speed advantage with the DRS open. And their suspension was pointed at as the reason their tyres hold up so well. But you can't just mimic the RB19's back end and expect the same results. The rear end aero performance is entirely dependent on everything in front of it. So if your floor and side pods don't function in the same way as Red Bull's, then your rear wing, beam wing and diffuser won't either. And if your front wing and suspension setup don't work like Red Bull's, then your floor and side pods won't either. You get the idea. Everything is connected. You can't just copy a specific part and expect the same returns. As proved by Mercedes copying Red Bull's side pods and then losing 0.8 points per race. But with the W15 being a brand new car from the chassis up, Mercedes now have the option to take inspiration from Red Bull all over their car. But again, it really isn't that simple. Red Bull have spent 3 years refining and tweaking their concept. Every aero-impacting surface has been refined and messed with, twisted this way and that through fractions of a degree, until the overall package performs in exactly the way they want it to. 3 years of innovation and refinement is a lot more than one winter. The scale of Mercedes' task this winter is humongous. They finished 451 points behind Red Bull this season, and Lewis was 341 points behind Max. If they want to close that gap, they can't just copy Red Bull. They have to find something Red Bull hasn't. Asked if there was a sense of optimism or skepticism about the new car design being enough to get Mercedes back to the front, Wolff said, "I've never in my life felt optimistic about anything. It may sound a bit miserable, but it's protected me about managing my expectations and just pushing harder. Because I think it's never good enough. That's why I sit here with a bittersweet feeling. We won P2, but we lost P1. Now I want to hear from you. Can Mercedes turn their fortunes around in 2024? Or will a brand new concept just lead to brand new problems? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you want more F1 news and analysis like this, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, drive safe and bye for now.